You know, sometimes you find an old newspaper clipping, maybe just a name on it.
Right. Just a faded piece of paper. Could be anything.
But what if that name could open up a whole story, a real person's life unfolding right there?
Exactly. A life you might otherwise never know about.
Well, that's what we're doing today. This deep dive is all about S. Sheet George S. Moore from Oneida, Kansas.
A young man whose life got caught up in, well, the huge events of World War II. We're tracing his journey, his service, and ultimately his sacrifice.
And the way we're doing this is, I think, pretty special. Our main source isn't, dry military files.
No, not primarily. We're digging into a really unique collection of local newspaper reports from the Sabetha Herald.
Right, spanning from 1943 all the way to 1948. And these aren't just official notices.
Not at all. They're personal glimpses, letters he sent home, community updates, even his obituary later on. It's the raw voice of a small town during wartime.
It feels incredibly intimate, doesn't it? Almost like reading someone's diary entries scattered over the years.
It does. And that's really key to our mission here. We want to piece together George's experience, not just the dates and places, but, the day-to-day stuff.
The challenges he faced, what it actually felt like.
Exactly, the personal impact. We're trying to turn this name back into a person for you, someone you can connect with.
Offering a perspective on the war that's maybe more personal, more universal in its way.
We're looking for those little details, those aha moments that really bring history alive.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. George Moore enters the U.S. Army in September 1941.
And think about that date, September 41.
Yeah, that's before Pearl Harbor, before the U.S. is officially even in the war.
Right. He initially starts out in the Coast Artillery. Their job was mainly, defending harbors, coastlines.
Which seems a world away from where he ended up. He pretty quickly moved over to the military police, the MPs.
He did. Now, you might see a couple of later articles mention November 1942 as his start date.
Right, there's a bit of discrepancy there.
But the earliest, most detailed account we found points clearly to September 41. So he was in uniform for quite a while before the big shift after Pearl Harbor.
So he shifts to the MPs. What was their role really like back then during the war? Was it just, keeping order in the camps?
That's a good question, because it was much more than that. Their role was really vital, though maybe not always glamorous.
Like the behind-the-scenes stuff?
Sort of, yeah. Maintaining order, sure, but also crucial logistics. Managing traffic flow, which was incredibly complex, handling prisoners of war. They really kept the wheels turning.
And George seemed to take to it?
It seems so. He actually wrote about it in June 43. He said, I hope that I go back into the military police. That is about all I have done since I have been in the Army.
Wow. So he felt it was his place.
Yeah, by that point, he'd been in for about 21 months, and he calculated he'd spent 17 of those as an MP. So it was clearly where he felt comfortable and, competent.
And in those early months, he moved around quite a bit, didn't he? Training camps in California, Camp Han, Camp Roberts.
That's right. And he wrote home about them, pretty candidly, too.
Like what?
Well, about Camp Roberts, he said, "This is a good-sized camp, but I still like Camp Han better. We sleep in tents and have dirt floors."
Doesn't sound like an upgrade. Was moving around like that pretty standard then, as the Army geared up?
It really was. The Army was expanding rapidly, figuring out where people were needed. His path, from Coast Artillery to MP, different camps. It highlights that constant shifting and adapting.
And what do these letters tell us about just the daily grind beyond the dirt floors?
Well, it shows that mix of hardship and maybe trying to find the good bits. He did admit, the Army gets pretty discouraging at times.
You can imagine.
But I guess it'll all turn out for the best.
That kind of forced optimism, right?
Oh.
But he also noted small improvements.
Like?
At Camp Roberts, he mentioned getting better sleep and better passes compared to Camp Han. Saturday noon until Monday morning, he wrote, which was better than before.
Small things matter, I guess. They really do. But he also felt the isolation. He mentioned being 250 miles from Los Angeles and 120 from San Francisco, really emphasizing how far he was from any big towns.
Cut off in a way.
Definitely. That feeling of remoteness comes through. It's that constant balancing act, the tough parts of service versus finding those small comforts and connections.
And it's those personal connections that really make him feel real, like when he wished he could be home for Mother's Day.
Yeah, with his brother Clyde and sister Marjorie. That longing for family is so clear.
And the detail about enjoying Lieutenant Stabler's columns in the local paper.
Right. It shows he's still plugged into his hometown, finding ways to stay connected, even from California.
He wasn't just a soldier. He was George Moore from Oneida, a son, a brother, reading his local paper.
Exactly. These little things paint such a richer picture.
So that connection home became real, at least for a little while. In July 1943, he got a furlough.
Yeah, a 15-day furlough. He came back to Oneida from his MP company, which was based near Los Angeles then.
And the paper reported he was looking fine and enjoys his work. Must have been a huge relief for his family.
Oh, absolutely. The chance to see him, hear his stories firsthand.
And did he share much about what he'd been doing just before the furlough?
He did. He talked about taking part in maneuvers out in the Southern California desert.
More training.
Yeah, but pretty intense stuff. It was designed to simulate real combat conditions, specifically for MPs.
What kind of things?
He said their tasks were to direct traffic and look after prisoners of war. And it wasn't just running around. It was conducted according to specified rules of maneuver and umpiring.
So, serious preparation for overseas duty.
Definitely. Building that muscle memory for the chaos they might face.
And the conditions out there in the desert? Sounds like they were incredibly tough.
They really were. George mentioned that he and his squad could be away from their command post for, get this, as much as a week at a time.
A week? Wow.
Sleeping on the ground and eat boxed rations. Just imagine that. The heat, the isolation, even just in training.
It really does sound like a different kind of battle. Just surviving the environment. Was there anything else that made it particularly dangerous?
Well, yes. Something pretty unexpected and frankly terrifying.
Rattlesnakes.
Oh, wow. Seriously.
He talked about it directly.
About sleeping with rattlesnakes. And he said it wasn't just a potential threat, it was a real one.
People actually got bitten.
He reported that several boys were bitten by snakes while sleeping. And tragically, some of those bites were fatal because they couldn't get treatment fast enough.
That's horrific.
It really underscores the danger. He stressed that knowing you'd been bitten was critical for getting help in time. It adds this whole other layer of risk, doesn't it? Fighting nature itself.
Absolutely. It challenges what you might picture as training. It was survival.
And the stakes were undeniably high. The Sabetha Herald actually connected George's experience to another incident that happened right around the same time in the same area.
What was that?
A whole platoon of infantry got lost during maneuvers in the exact location George was describing.
Lost in the desert.
Yeah. And the outcome was tragic. 3 soldiers died and 1 went missing. The cause: extremely high temperatures, exposure, and lack of food and water.
So even without enemy contact, the training itself could be deadly.
It really could. It must have hammered home the seriousness of everything, the risks involved, even before getting near a battlefield.
So George has his furlough, gets that brief taste of home in August 43, and then it's back to duty. Camp Young, California.
Right, back to the grind. But then came a really significant change in his service path.
What happened?
Well, despite all his time as an MP, and remember, he seemed to prefer it.
What?
He requested foreign service. And because of that request, the Army placed him in the infantry.
Wow. From MP to infantry, that's a huge shift.
It really is. It speaks volumes about, the adaptability expected of soldiers, but also maybe his own willingness to go where the need was greatest.
Even if it meant a more dangerous frontline role.
Exactly. Leaving a role he knew well for the complete unknown of infantry combat overseas. That takes a certain kind of commitment.
So from that point, his journey really picked up pace towards Europe, didn't it?
It did. It becomes that familiar story for so many servicemen, bouncing between camps in California.
Camp Hannigan, Roberts, San Bernardino, those maneuver areas.
Right. Then across the country to New York City, the staging point for heading overseas.
And he arrived in the European theater sometime in the summer of 1944.
That's right. And as he was making this huge transition, moving further and further from home, the paper shared one small detail about how he tried to keep those home ties.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
It's quite touching, actually. George apparently saved all published service addresses for future reference.
Addresses from the newspaper.
Yeah, addresses of other local soldiers.
Yeah.
So he could look up hometown soldiers if occasion arose.
Wow. That says a lot.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just a small thing. But it shows that deep need for community, for familiar faces, even amidst the vastness of the Army and the war. He was actively trying to maintain those threads.
Carrying a piece of Oneida with him, in a way.
You could definitely say that.
Okay, so he's in Europe, summer of 44, now in the infantry. And then comes the news family's dreaded most.
Yes. The difficult part of the story. SSG George Moore was reported missing in action in France. That was dated November 10th, 1944.
And the telegram arrived home.
His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Fred Moore, received it on November 27th, almost 3 weeks later.
Just imagine that. Wait, that uncertainty, receiving a telegram saying missing.
It must have been absolute agony, that period of limbo, not knowing. It was a shared nightmare for so many families during the war.
And for the Moores, that awful uncertainty didn't last too long, but the confirmation was devastating.
It was. Just over a week later, on December 7th, 1944, Pearl Harbor Day, ironically, they received a second telegram.
And this one confirmed it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It stated clearly that George had been killed in action November 10th. The waiting was over, but replaced by that terrible certainty of loss.
Did they know where it happened, what unit he was with?
The information came through, though there was a slight correction in the local paper later. Initially, they knew he was with an infantry unit in General Patton's Third Army.
A very famous command.
Absolutely. The first reports linked him to the 319th Infantry, specifically during the battle to take Delny Ridge on November 10th, the day he was killed.
Delmy Ridge.
Later information clarified he was actually with the 119th Infantry Regiment, which was part of the 80th Division. Still under Patton's Third Army, still fighting in that same area.
So Delmy Ridge in France, what was happening there?
It was a significant battle. Delmy Ridge was strategic high ground, and there was fierce fighting to capture it.
And George was right there.
It seemed so. The newspaper reflected on his past MP experience, suggesting that in the performance of which in actual combat, no doubt, met his death.
Meaning he might have still been using those skills.
It's quite possible. Directing combat traffic, maybe handling prisoners under fire. The very things he'd trained for in the desert now applied on a live battlefield. His death came right in the heat of that combat.
A direct consequence of being on that front line.
Yes, putting his training and his life on the line.
After his death, his parents started receiving communications, didn't they?
Yeah.
Letters and such.
Yes, in the months that followed, particularly around February 1945, they received several letters that give us more insight. These came from different people, showing different aspects of the response to his loss.
Like who?
Well, one was from a Squibare, George W. Berridge, who served with George.
A fellow soldier. What did he say?
It's quite moving. Even with military censorship, he managed to confirm the location, Delmy Ridge. He also offered some comfort, assuring the Moores that George did not suffer.
That must have meant something.
Immense, I'd imagine. And he described George as well-liked by everyone and really a swell fellow. Just a heartfelt message from a comrade trying to ease their pain.
Were there other letters?
Yes, another very powerful one came from a couple in Kansas City, Mr. and Mrs. R.A. Hundley.
Did they know George?
No, but they knew the pain. They had lost their own son, Eltina Wyatt F. Hundley, an Air Corps bombardier back in 1943. They sent a letter with a gold star.
Oh, the symbol for families who'd lost someone in service.
Exactly. And their words really captured that sense of shared national sacrifice. They wrote, "You have laid a costly sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. The loss is not yours alone, it is all America's loss.
Wow.
Perhaps if we do not live in vain, he will not have died in vain." It shows how communities, even strangers, connected through this shared grief.
It wasn't just one family's burden, it was felt across the country.
Precisely. And there was also a letter from Chaplain Troy, Thomas Keeley, more official, informing them about the services held for George and his initial burial site in Lorraine, France.
And there was that detail about the Purple Heart Medal arriving.
Oh, right. A particularly poignant detail.
Yeah.
Mrs. Moore received her son's Purple Heart on her birthday.
On her birthday. Such a mix of sorrow and, I suppose, pride.
Exactly. A tangible symbol of his sacrifice, arriving on a day meant for celebration. A very bittersweet, heartbreaking moment.
How did the immediate community back in Kansas react to the news of his death?
As you'd expect in a small town like Oneida, the impact was deeply felt. The Sabetha Herald reported that people were shocked and grieved at his passing.
They remembered him well.
Yes, they mentioned his frequent visits to nearby Sabetha and that he had a host of friends who would miss him dearly. It wasn't an abstract loss. It was personal for the whole community.
Did they hold a service for him locally soon after?
They did. An initial memorial service was held on Memorial Sunday, May 27, 1945. This was at Gilman Hall in Oneida.
Memorial Sunday. Seems fitting.
Yes. The American Legion played an active role. And there was an interesting note. The family requested not flowers, perhaps wanting a simpler, more solemn remembrance.
And people came.
Oh, yes. The paper listed relatives and friends who traveled from various cities to be there. It really shows how his loss resonated beyond just Oneida. It was a community coming together to grieve.
But his body wasn't brought home right away, was it? That took some time.
That's right. The reburial didn't happen until several years after the war ended, in September 1948,
So finally, a sense of closure for the family.
hopefully. Services were held on a Sunday, first at the Popkis Funeral Home in Sabetha, and then a graveside service back in Oneida Cemetery, bringing George home to rest permanently.
Were there military honors at the reburial?
Yes, full military honors were provided by the Oneida American Legion Post and other servicemen. It was a final, formal recognition of his service.
A dignified farewell.
Very much so. The report mentioned specific participants like Reverend S.B. Parker officiating, singers performing, and it also confirmed the awards he'd earned.
We mentioned the Purple Heart. Were there others?
Yes, he was also awarded the Bronze Star, which recognizes heroic or meritorious service in a combat zone, and the Combat Infantry Badge, a really respected badge for infantrymen who fought in active ground combat.
So significant recognition for his actions.
Definitely. He had initially been buried, like so many others killed overseas, in the U.S. military cemetery at Ligny, France. Bringing his remains home was the final step in that long journey.
You know, reflecting on all this, piecing together George Moore's story just from these local newspaper clippings, it's really quite powerful, isn't it?
It truly is. It goes so far beyond just dates and military movements. You get a sense of the actual person, the family bonds, the community connection.
And the real personal cost of war felt right there in Oneida, Kansas.
Exactly. These local archives, they transform this huge, abstract, historical event, World War II, into something deeply intimate and human. It reminds you that every single name on a memorial represents a full life, a unique story.
It really does make you think. As we wrap up this deep dive into George's life, maybe the question for you listening is this. What does his story make you ponder about all those other personal stories hidden beneath the surface of history?
Yeah, the stories may be sitting in dusty local papers or old family letters. How do we make sure those individual sacrifices, those intimate journeys, aren't forgotten? And what can they still teach us today?